Good morning or good afternoon, Toledo, whenever you're seeing this. It is first day of Spirit Week, Marvelous Monday, and I chose a marvelous story to read to you. Fancy Nancy, written by Jane O'Connor, illustrated by Robin Preiss Glasser. I love Fancy Nancy because she uses beautiful words to describe herself, and she's very eloquent and marvelous. And you guys might have known last year when we did Good Night Toledo, I read a Fancy Nancy story. Clearly, I like her a lot. You know what? I'm still learning this camera angle of how to do this. See, learning new things every day. This is my room before I made it fancy. Look at that. Yeah, looks like a nice, good room. So clean. I love being fancy. Sublime. Look at those great words. My favorite color is fuchsia. That's a fancy way of saying purple. I like to write my name with a pen that has a plume. That's a fancy way of saying feather. And I can't wait to learn French because everything in French sounds fancy. So there's her pen with a plume. Nobody in my family is fancy at all. They never even ask for sprinkles. There's a lot they don't understand. Lace-trimmed socks do help me play soccer better. Sandwiches definitely taste better when you stick in frilly toothpicks. A princess is supposed to keep her tiara on. What's a fancy girl to do? I ask my doll Maribel. Her full name is Maribel Lavinia Chandelier. So dramatic. Then I get an idea that is stupendous. That's a fancy word for great. Maybe I can teach my family how to be fancy. I make an ad and stick it on the fridge. Learn to be fancy. Lessons from Nancy start today. Easy, fun, free. And look, she makes a poster and adds color and pictures. She decorates it. Soon, there's a knock on my door. My family saw the ad. They want to get started right away. Plain, yellow, fancy, gold. Plain, letter, fancy, patent leather. Plain, glasses, fancy, sunglasses. So many ways to be fancy. The trouble is, my family doesn't own any fancy clothes. That's okay. I go find, what's that fancy word? Oh, yes, some accessories. Oh, so she's going to take some accessories and fancy those clothes right up. Ooh la la, my family is posh. That's a fancy word for fancy. My mom twirls in front of the mirror. Why don't we go somewhere fancy tonight? How about dinner at the King's Crown? Dad suggests. Wow, my parents are acting fancier already. May I escort you lovely ladies outside? The limousine is waiting. My dad is our chauffeur. That's a fancy word for driver. Isn't it fun to play dress up and play fantasy with your family? Sometimes it's hard for grown-ups to play and be dressed up, but just try to convince them because it is a lot of fun. When we arrive at the King's Crown, everyone looks up. They probably think we're movie stars. I am so proud of my whole family. They eat with their pinkies up and call each other darling, darling. You guys can have a fancy and marvelous dinner tonight at your house with your own families. You could go out to dinner, or you could just decorate your beautiful home yourselves. Maybe make a menu with beautiful colors. For desserts, let's have parfaits, my mom says. That's French for ice cream sundaes. Amazing. My mother knows French. When our parfaits are ready, I curtsy and say, Merci. Oh, that looks delicious, that ice cream. I would like to eat it all. I carry the tray like a fancy waiter. Oops. I trip. I slip. The tray does a double flip. I don't feel fancy anymore. I want to go home. After I get all cleaned up, I put on my dressing gown. Those are fancy words for bathrobe. I feel much better. I'm ready for a parfait. I tell my parents, thank you for being fancy tonight. I love you, my dad says. I love you, my mom says. And all I say back is, I love you. Because there isn't a fancy or better way of saying that. And that is your Fancy Nancy marvelous story for Marvelous Monday. Thanks for listening.